It's the county conversation, recording in the moments just after James Anderson has walked out onto the Lord's pitch for the final time as an England cricketer. And to join myself, Cameron Ponsonby, and the cricketers Nick Friend, we thought who better to get on to discuss a little bit of Jimmy Anderson than his leader at Lancashire County Cricket Club, Keaton Jennings. A, Keaton, welcome to the podcast. And B, just to begin straight away, you had him back in the team last week, 7 for 35. What is it like to have someone like that, with that stature in the game, kind of coming back into the group?
Yeah, morning, guys. I suppose firstly, a bit of a schoolboy error from probably all three of us, really, not seeing that it's the start of the test summer, 11 o'clock this morning. But no, look, Jimmy's, and there's been a lot of words thrown around this week to describe him, his career, the way he goes about things, from a guy that... I sat with my best mate years and years and years ago. It's would have been 15 years ago. I remember England playing Pakistan in a series, and me and my best mate had a theory on how to play Jimmy. And Excellent. he's so much better than that. And you stand at second slip to him, and you watch a guy who I'd never say anybody's mastered their craft, because I think cricket, it just bites you when you least want it to. But he's so good at what he does. That it's amazing to watch. It's like Brody said it this week. He's almost like an addict of the art of bowling, and it's amazing to stand there and watch as a cricket nuffy. You playing with Jimmy Anderson, but then to sit down and have a coffee with him, have a beer with him, and just chat life, chat golf, chat whatever is going around the change room that day is absolutely amazing. So to the change room with him this week was really cool, man. It was, you had a ground in the sort of back end of the county. People get really on top of you. Jimmy at one point couldn't even come out the change room, so he was literally stuck in a 4 walls artificial light for sort of a day. But no, look, he's a fantastic man. His cricket speaks for itself, but to have that bloke in and around the change room, he'll probably hate the attention around him this week, and I think that sort of sums it up, that he's more interested in trying to win games of cricket. You saw the energy he put in this week. He bowled 35 overs out of sort of 120. Like, he bowled a quarter of the overs at an unbelievable intensity.
That was also your decision. You were like, I'm going to bowl James Anderson as captain as much.
Have
as
you
possible.
ever taken the ball off of him when he's bowling well?
Why would you?
But absolutely. So no, look, it was amazing. And you said lead a guy like that. You do lead a guy like that in terms of role, but he leads his space so incredibly well. He just goes and does what he does so beautifully, and he's very honest with you. When he's tired, he communicates it. When he's not, he wants another one. He's awesome. So look, I've had the honor of being able to share training with him.
What was the? We're probably going to.
I think we're going to ask the same question. What was this theory about how to play Jimmy Anderson? Are we allowed to learn a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So me and my best mate were both left-handers, albeit he batted 11, I batted at the top. We had the theory, play for the in-swinger because you'll miss the away swinger.
Nice.
And it took me all of 5 balls at Southport when I was playing for Durham for that theory to be disbanded. So I'd faced 5 balls, played and missed 3, inside edged 1 for 2, and nicked 1 to first slip. So that was my lot.
Perfect. I do. I remember a guy called George Edwards who used to be at Lancashire. You wouldn't have overlapped with him. We were from the same club.
No, I played against him. Yeah, I'm that old. Yeah.
Perfect. So I'm kind of mates with his brother back home, and I remember when George would come back to the cricket club, he joined Lancashire, and it was the first time I remember hearing a professional kind of talking about the kind of golfing class being quite tangible between like peers, as it were. And he was talking as a seamer, he'd demonstrate by Jimmy Anderson like holding the ball, and he'd be like, if he just puts a tiny bit of pressure on his index finger, that's the in swinger. If he just puts a tiny bit of pressure on his middle finger, that's the away swinger. And you have this guy who I would be at the time a teenager thinking George Edwards was like the best bowler in the world because he's the professional at the club, basically. And he's like, this guy's unbelievable. But on that topic of you kind of facing different people around the ground, the topic of the day is now going to be who is the kind of lucky or unlucky candidate to be deemed as the heir to Jimmy. Who are you facing in the county championship you're giving that crown to? Who are you picking?
To be fair, we faced Ollie Stone and Dill Pennington at their place, Trent Bridge. And I thought they exploited conditions beautifully. The wicket went up and down a little bit, and they ran in with really good pace. And I thought they were really impressive given the context of the game, given the context of what they had to produce at that time. So I think those two for me were really good. Ollie's bowled. I think he's played every game this year, and he's still bowled quite quickly, which is really impressive. I mean, I'm knackered and I'm only batting. I don't need to run in all day, so it's pretty hard work. But I'd say those two for me were probably right up there with those spells.
Is there anyone who's sort of away from the radar who, I don't know, who just impresses you? Like, not necessarily. I feel like heir to Jimmy is a terrible title to give anyone anyway.
Absolutely. That's
so if we
why
move
we
away
did
from
it.
that, if we move away from that and go like more nuance and like,
I don't do nuance, Nick. Top line.
Top line, one name, bam.
Like, so I guess like in your role, top of the order, opening bat, presumably like all sorts of conditions. Yeah, I don't know, like guys, like all kinds of guys are probably pretty challenging across a 14-game season. Like beyond guys who you know are going to travel for pay, or not travel for pay, who are going to hurry up a bit. Like who out there have you just found challenging? Who's impressed you?
Yeah, I'll probably go back to Dill Pennington. I think as a left-hander, he sort of falls away slightly. So I think when he comes around the wicket, when he doesn't try to swing it, that natural angle is almost, it feels a little bit like Ishan Sharma. So when he used to feel like the ball's coming at you and then leaving you, which made it quite hard work. I think the hard thing with County Cricket, not to get into the schedule debate, but it's because you play so much and there's no rest in between. When squads don't have the depth of being able to cycle through bowlers, guys have to go again and go again and go again. So naturally, you don't have that same sort of spike of pace. So you almost have to pick right the spell. I'm going to try to turn it on, which I thought Dylan, Ollie Stone in that spell did beautifully. So yeah, look, it's quite an interesting debate as well. I mean, we've played 2 games this year already on club grounds, essentially, which have produced 2 good games of cricket, but they're still club surfaces, so that naturally doesn't lead itself to bowling sort of 90 mile an hour anyway. But yeah, Dill's impressed me. He's a strong lad. So hopefully when and if he gets a chance this summer, he runs in and he does really nicely.
Would you have faced him when he was at Worcester as well? Because he's spoken a lot about how much better he thinks he's got over the last 8-9 months. Like, did you feel anything tangibly different this year to if and when you faced him previously?
No, I've never faced him previously. I think Stoney for me was one that I've found has had quite a big jump up. Obviously, he's had his injury sort of history, and now to play this chunk of cricket first, he's quite impressive. But then do it at that pace. And we faced him in the T20s at their spot, and again, he was quick. You feel like you have that sort of bouncer threat, and he's quite aggressive, which is nice. I mean, I know him quite well, so for him to get up and get in your face is awesome. I quite dig it. It's cool.
Well, theoretically, obviously Jimmy's left the door open to next year, and I saw Benke was talking about. Presumably, Benke's just on his knees, and like from I don't know. I mean, this is speaking very theoretically, and this is probably sounds like a silly question. I sort of mean it in a more nuanced way than it'll sound, but like, how much of an advantage? Let's say you have Jimmy Anderson at your disposal for next season in the ranks. Play as many games as is sensible for a 42-year-old. I think you'd be like. How much of an advantage does that give you? I spoke to Jimmy Adams yesterday, who's obviously now Hampshire's batting coach, who for a while was sort of like his one of his like early bunnies, and like he said, like from a county perspective, it'd be like a massive pain in the arse to every other county. And like, but for you guys, the bit away from, apart from nicking everyone off in the top order, like how much would that give you? What does I guess what would it give you, if that makes sense?
Yeah, huge. You've got a guy that's played 188 test matches. So firstly, from an experience point of view, he knows what he's doing. He's very good at, in the game situation, reading and speaking. So what a lot of guys might do is do their skill, go stand and cover and do their own thing. Where Jimmy's very good at chatting to Tom Bay, George Balderson, all of our lads to go, oh, this is what I felt, this is what I think, try this. So he's trying to work problem solve all the way through. So he's leading other guys' space as well, which is amazing. So away from just being able to execute, it's that the ability to analyze and then produce what is correct for that situation, which I think is amazing. And then you come off the field and he's so good at sitting down, having a beer, and then chatting about the day's play, which is fantastic.
This is sort of wider than Jimmy, but like when someone of that stature comes back, obviously you've had Nathan Lyon for the last few months as well. Like, do people play them differently? Like how much, as much as everyone will tell you to play the ball and to forget who's in front of you, like, you know, like, have you had it? Like I'm trying to think of who you'd have faced as an example. It's even maybe when Stokes came back a few weeks ago. Like, how does that happen? Like, do you see people just play the name at times? I guess how hard is it to not do that?
I think it used to happen more, but I think this will sound very sort of cliche, but I think the way your younger guys are playing now, because they're being exposed to franchise cricket around the world, they're getting exposed to top end cricket and facing your top sort of percent of the cricketing world. They don't have that same fear factor. Unfortunately, for the lack of fear factor, these guys produce at an incredibly high level. So they may not be playing Nathan Lyon or Jimmy Anderson, but what these guys produce is phenomenal to try and then play. I mean, Nathan, as an example, he would bowl to number 10 or number 8 or whoever it is. You'd have 3 guys back on boundary. And I'm still there like, Nathan, you get a guy out and he goes, no, it's fine. I'm just going to hold my lens. And literally bowl maiden after maiden after maiden, because what he produced was so good and he just shut down the field. And similar concept for Jimmy, where especially if conditions are in his favour, if they're not, he's just got such a good ability of shutting the game down so quickly, which your younger guys might not know how to cope with. So they might not be playing against Jimmy Anderson, but they're playing against a high quality player.
Sure.
If that answers your question.
Yeah.
In regards to I love stuff like this. I know it's quite simple for you being like, these amazing players, what's it like to play against them? But the same with Nathan Lyon. Like, would you have ever faced him before? You have a reputation as like being an excellent player of spin. When you get into the nets against Nathan Lyon, like, how does that go? What's the experience like? Does it live up to the kind of hype in your own mind where you're going, I'm looking forward to seeing what this is like? And on the flip side, does Nathan Lyon go, I've heard you're quite good at playing spin?
Well, so our OT nets are notorious for either going up and down or spinning. They're quite a challenging sort of surface.
Okay.
So Nath came in for his first bowl and he had a 2-tone ball, like a red and white ball, to see how the seam was coming out. And I've never faced him before, so cool, I'm going to face Nath. I think 1 or 2 balls like rag past the outside edge. I'm like, no, I'm not standing here prodding for like, yeah, it's fine. Sweep. Everything. Eventually after literally just sweep. Eventually after about 5-10 balls, he's like, no, fine, everybody's square. I'm like, mate, you can put 9 guys behind me. I'm sweeping because I play the straight bat, you're nicking me off. So, but he's that competitive that in the net, he's then going, well, this is my field. I've got 3 guys there. I'm going to do this and this and this. And he's played, 185 test matches, and he's still in a net session before a county gig. He's getting competitive with the guys in the net session, which is awesome. So, I mean, these guys compete at a different level to the rest of society, which is amazing to see.
Can I start on a Lancs level? Like, obviously, those guys, obviously, you had those 2, although you had Nathan start the season, Jimmy for 1 week. And I guess you probably started slowish under Benke, a lot of, I guess, fair bit of change over winter. Like, I guess, how's it been? Like, how, obviously, you're going well in the Blast, picked up in the Championship as well. Like, how was it difficult at the beginning? And I guess with that sort of slightly added complication with Nathan coming in on the back of Tom Hartley's tour of India and some of the noise around that. Like, was it just quite a difficult transition for you as a captain and for Dale coming into, I don't know, like that environment with a fair bit of change, a fair bit of expectation?
Yeah, 100%. I think the hardest thing to give in the sort of inside, we did a lot of work around gelling as a team. So we went to India on a pre-season tour. We did a lot of work around not the whole corporate value system, but how are we going to judge ourselves? What are we going to judge ourselves against? So when results go well or poorly, what are we going to judge ourselves on? So we did quite a lot of work on that, and we've tried to touch base with that over a sort of bi-weekly, 3-weekly period to make sure that we keep touching base. But then fundamentally, regardless of how much work you do off the field, you have to perform. We're in a results-driven industry. You have to score runs, you have to take wickets, you have to win. That's and we're playing at Old Trafford for Lancashire Cricket, you at one of the biggest clubs in the world. So that is the expectation level. So then to lose 3 on the bounce in your first 5 games, it was hard work. I'm the kind of bloke where you probably shouldn't, but I take things personally. I want to perform. I want to do well. I want to win. I'm competitive. So you now lose 3 on the bounce, and now you're like, well, you try and take things on. Benke's very similar. It's problem solving. I think for the 2 weeks post the, I can't remember where we were. It might have been in Nottingham. We went up to Durham for the Blackpool game.
Yeah,
it was about a 14 or 15-day period. I didn't have a day off, so it was like you just keep trucking just to try and find a solution to what the problems are, which fundamentally aren't solved unless you score runs, take wickets, and win the game of cricket, which is quite bizarre, really.
So someone who will be going back into the domestic game, potentially going back into the domestic game, is James Anderson. I think something that I've always been very interested in is what it's like returning to the domestic game, having tasted life at the top. I remember being at the Oval for like a rainy, like whatever evening, and Rory Burns is out there batting and no one's in the crowd because it's been raining all day. And I'm like, this looks worse, basically, in terms of like, what is that adrenaline dump like returning to a kind of sparsely attended ground, having played in such a kind of high pressure, high attention environment?
Look, it can be really hard. I think one of the biggest things I've learned over the period of my career, I've had ups and downs. I've been dropped from Durham 2, 3, 4 times, dropped from England 2, 3, 4 times. I've learned you have to be where your feet are. So whether you're playing at Old Trafford in a test match against India, packed house, or you're playing anywhere in the country on a cold Tuesday night when it's raining, you have to produce results on that day at that time. So it's a tough skill to be able to sort of mentally tune in and get competitive for that moment, especially when you've competed around the world for a length of time. I mean, take Jimmy for an example, he's played in every country, continent, situation, ground, all around the world. So to come back and then have the output that he would probably expect from himself in those moments will be hard. But the one thing I would say for a guy like Jimmy, when he's played for us, I mean, he played 2019 in the One Day Cup. His GPS metrics, you know, the lads where the GPS trackers.
Yeah.
His GPS metrics were over and above what he produces for England in the Test match during that period.
Really?
So it was like what he puts out for Langs is phenomenal. I mean, I don't know his metrics from Southport, but just visually, he was quicker, bouncier, more hostile than sort of everyone else. It's amazing. So he does produce it. He steps up.
I think when we first spoke 2 or 3 years ago, that it was about precisely this, and I remember asking you about that weird sort of like the weirdness of the food chain, that you work all your career to get to the top, and then you have your go at the top, and then when you come out of that, you don't slide back into line. You sort of go to the bottom of the queue. And I drafted a list earlier. I'm sure I know there are more. I'll miss some off here, but like it's a big old club, like the former England opener. You know, like when most games you play, you obviously played to Stephen Mead last week, Roy Burns, Dom Sibley, Sleaze, Div 1, Live, Robson, Stoneman, Div 2. Like, it's how like is it weird, like coming up and playing against guys who I guess in some cases you've opened the batting for England with, but also I guess you've got that quite unique shared experience with.
I wouldn't say it's weird, but I think it is that shared experience. I think this whole, not Jimmy saga, but the way this has panned out in the last couple of weeks for me is ringing bells of post-Andrew Strauss. So everybody that comes into play is going to get compared to Jimmy. And not Jimmy at his worst, Jimmy at his best. And that's going to be the echelon or the benchmark for guys to reach, which I'm not saying that was my downfall at all. I had some serious technical and mental faults that sort of panned into my performances, but I think that it can be quite tough to manage yourself emotionally in that situation. So for guys coming in, it's about doing it their way. I look at it from a bowling point of view and say, you're not Jimmy Anderson, and that's a good thing. And go and do it your way. Go and bowl the way you have bowled for your county. Go and do it have some fun with it. And that's what Jimmy's echoed that message to Jamie Smith this morning. He said live on the TV this morning that he wanted to say, go and enjoy every moment, go and play, because it goes very quickly.
Did you? Can I just follow up on that? When did you said obviously it wasn't as simple to say as that you were. It was the fact of replacing Strauss. But how long did it take you to work out that you weren't Strauss Mark II, if that makes sense? Like, is it hard to go into that role and not think, well, I've got a lot to live up to here?
Yes, because you, as a player, you want to perform, you want to do well. You walk into an entirely new situation, like you were mentioning about coming down or going up and then coming down. You do come sort of up, if that makes sense. You go from playing no one watching you to 50 million people, and 50 million people have an opinion on you. How do you manage your emotions in that period? How do you manage what you see, what you hear? And then how do you perform? The skill level is higher. You've got guys like Jimmy Anderson, Stuart Broad, Vernon Philander, Ashwin, Bumrah running in at you. They're pretty good players, and they know what they're doing, and you are still a puppy at the start of your international career coming out to play. So I don't think I necessarily compared myself to Strauss, but I think it was, for me, I just struggled to find a comfort for myself, and then string periods of play together that I felt like I could sort of solidify, one, my place, and then two, how I felt in that environment.
Dom Sibley gave an interview in the Telegraph recently, which I really enjoyed because I found it very kind of human. I don't know if you saw it, but he was basically saying by the end he was hoping it was going to rain, and kind of was a kind of being dropped for England was a relief. A, like, did that resonate with yourself at all? And B, how does that, when we live in like sports in particular, you're always meant to be of the mindset that I want to be at the top. I want to perform at the highest level. I want to be amazing all the time. Everything's got to be incredible. Does that desire to get back into the England team remain? Like, especially in the kind of strange circumstance you are, where you've got this, you've got a reputation of being like potentially the subcontinent specialist. So every 2 years it could be like, oh, Keaton, there's a tour of Pakistan. Actually, would you like to play for England again? Kind of, how do you balance that kind of mindset? Do you want to get back in? Can you take it or leave it? Did you relate to Dom when he gave that interview?
So probably firstly, did it resonate? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can remember in the middle of the South African series, this is probably only my fourth test match. Went back up home. I had like a little an espresso coffee machine at the time, and I had like a little sort of sleeve unit on the wall. I remember stood there panicking with like sheer anxiety about which coffee I was going to have in the morning. So I couldn't just mentally relax and make that decision, as simple as that was, because of the mental pressure I was putting under myself. I actually, Philander at that Trent Bridge, I think it was after the Trent Bridge test, he nipped one back, second innings, bowled me. But I missed it by a foot. It just hardly did anything. And I actually made some notes, which I've kept as a reminder to myself of where I was mentally, purely to show that's how fragile you were at that point in time. Not don't go back there, but it's a reference point just to keep reminding yourself that life is bigger than that. So absolutely, Dom's article sort of resonated massively with me. Second question, do I still have ambitions? Yeah, absolutely. You ask any county cricketers that want to play for England, absolutely. It's hearing the crowd sing Jerusalem at 11 a.m. is one of the best feelings you can ever have. It's amazing. Taking a slip catch at Lord's, running off, and just it's unreal. Have I made peace with the fact that I probably won't ever pull an England shirt again? Yeah, absolutely. And that's probably why I think my performances over the last 3 years have improved, because I feel like I've gone out and just tried to perform wherever I am, and try to get competitive with that. And I've loved my cricket as a result. I'm not looking at other lads' scores. I'm not looking at my stats over the last year and geez, I need to get 100 today. I'm playing and trying to do the best I can. And if I don't, cool, I'll sit down, have a cup of coffee, have a glass of wine, whatever it is, have a beer, and crack on.
You say probably won't. You obviously did the Lions tour over the winter. Like, do you know where you stand? Or
That's a great question. um, yes and no. I think fundamentally, you know where you stand, you score runs, and you put yourself in the shop window. They want to see changes in my game to push the game forward and allow bowlers more time to take wickets, quote unquote baseball. Cool. That's, I feel like, not I've done that over a period of time, but I feel like there's definitely been a progression. But at the end of the day, I'm not making those selection decisions. It's for guys that are in that position to make those decisions. All I can do is go and bat, score runs, have fun. Watching England over the last period of time has been good fun. They've played some really exciting cricket, and it's been really cool to see and to be a part of that Pakistan series, to win 3-0 in a country where I don't think England had won 3 test matches there in all of sort of history.
The world
ever. So I didn't play, but to be a part of that group and to fielded for
you were back under the lid, weren't you?
Back under the lid in Islamabad. Livy did his knee, I think. So yeah, it was spent all my time fielding and didn't play, which was. But no, look, I'd love to play. Play for England's amazing.
Can I just ask, in terms of when you refer back to the coffee machine and where like the anxiety kind of manifested during that time, I think for recreational players, or maybe I'm just speaking for myself here, like if you play above upper level once or whatever, where people are at their most nervous, just like in the field, where yes, you might be doing your skill batting or bowling, but there's an element of like calm that comes about there, because you're like, well, this I'm in control of this bit. But if you are nervous playing for England, as it were, are you standing at backward point for a day, spending a day being on edge? Like, is that basically how that transpires?
Absolutely.
That sounds horrible.
All the time,
I would never want to play professional cricket. That'd be horrible.
The worst bit's almost the downtime. So like Dom was saying, he's praying for rain. It's probably in that time where he's finished having tea, he's chilling out, maybe flicking Netflix on, and he's going, no, your mind flicks to tomorrow. And it's your downtime that's the worst bit, because when you go to the nets, okay, cool, I know what I need to do. I'm going to focus on my backlift. I'm going to do whatever. Cool, there's a focus. That downtime's hard because your mind races all over the gaff. You don't have a clear focus to go and do. You have to sit and be with your own intrinsic thoughts. And I think that's the hardest bit at times, because you pick up your phone, you look on social media, what Steve down the road has said, because he's an amazing player and he's played.
He is good, to be fair.
Yeah, he's brilliant. He's really good. But I think that for me was the hardest bit. So wake up in the morning, your mind immediately goes to tomorrow. Okay, right, I need to train. I'm going to face Vernon Philander again. How am I going to get through this? What do I need to do? And get in the bowling machine and just practice defensive technique. Like that's the hard bit for me.
I remember my last Middlesex AHU game. I was at third man.
Go.
No, this is
Great player.
I didn't realise this was a thing, but I thought it was just me. But you say that, Cam. Like I remember being down at third man, and the ball was sort of like big uppercut. Came to it, probably bounced about 10 yards short of me. Never a catch, but you're taking it there, like in front of your chest. And I remember being so conditioned to, you've got to do what they want to, what you think they want to see you do. I went to try and long barrier it, and I ended up like sitting under the ball. And I remember picking up the ball from like some parents behind me, being like, "This is so humiliating," and everyone just saw that. And yeah, but it's only out of nerves. And I think the reason I was going to ask a similar question, because I interviewed Chris Dent in pre-season. I don't know if you've seen what he said. I'd never heard a professional player say it before, but it made a lot of sense. Like he was very open on basis. So whenever he's been asked about England, he'd always say, "Of course, I want to play for England, professional cricketer." But actually, when he drilled into it privately, like did he actually want to, and did he think he was the right character to be able to cope with those bits you just talked about there? And he said that the truth was he never really did. Like it was, but who's going to stand there and admit it at the peak of your powers when you're averaging 40 in the championship? He's coming to it's his testimonial year this year. Maybe slightly easier to have that conversation, but I'd never heard a player say it before. Like, I wonder, do you think is it for everyone?
Good question. Probably not. I think it probably wasn't for me at that point in my life. I'll be quite honest. It it scarred me in a lot of ways. You don't realize the pressures it's going to put on you, your family, sort of everything that comes with a poor performance. When it goes well, yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. But I think you have to have outlets to cope. It's probably not for everyone. But that's also why it's so cool. That's also why it's like so amazing, because it is hard. You do have to deal with the goods and the bads. I mean, the goods, one way, you can change as a person, you get all the accolades, you get all the rest of it. And you can lose a real sense of, one, where you've come from, and two, who you need around you, which is quite impressive. A guy like Jimmy hasn't done. He's the most humble and sort of sincere bloke around. But then on the other side of the shoe, when things don't go well, how are you going to cope with that? So no, I probably wouldn't say it's for everyone. Although experiencing is pretty mint.
Yeah, I guess it's the only way of finding out, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, just last question on this before like moving on. You mentioned that like it wasn't right for you at the time. Like I kind of nodded as you were saying that, and I went, hang on, he scored 100 in his first innings. Like surely after a day and a half of being an international cricketer, there's an element, if not a lot of you, that gets back to your hotel and goes, man, I belong here. Like this is meant to be the hardest stand in the world. I've gone away to India. I've turned up. Like, does that not did that not give you an immediate sense of this is me?
Yeah, it probably did. But I think when you look at the best players in the world, Ruti, Sangakkara, that sort of real top guys that have sustained cricket at that level, batting at least at that level for a long period of time, the ability to cope with poor performances, I think, is the difference. And the reason why I say it probably wasn't for me at that time, my poor performance led to another one, led to another one, led to another one. As opposed to Ruti was, it's fine, I played a bad shot, park it, done. And he moved on, where he comes out tomorrow, his mind's fresh, he's fresh, he comes out and he plays the way he could and should, where I was still holding on to yesterday. And I was still holding on to that dismissal or the error I made, as opposed to, morning around the wicket, Trent Bridge, overcast, nipped away, nicked off, cool, well bowled you. Yeah. It was, I always felt like it was my fault. It was, I had to change that. I had to do better. I had to, and that's why I probably said at that point in time, for me, it wasn't right. Where I think now, I did a MBA last year, and I've been able to look at my cricket and me as very separate things, been able to analyze it, be pretty brutal on myself and the way I go about things, but then leave it. I've done it, cool, park it, move on.
Yeah, just to finish that thought in terms of like the performance you'd hold on to, I guess your debut was the extremes in both extents. You scored 100 and then you got a golden duck. So like, you finished the test match, where was your emotions there? Was it, which one did you think was the fluke? Was it the century, or was it the duck?
To be entirely honest, after sounding like a bit of a cliched nuffy, I hated the fact we got absolutely belted. So we got 500 in the first innings, they got 1,000, and we got rolled over second innings. So that's kind of where I sat with. I didn't the 100 was cool, but I was like, we've just been belted in India, and this feels hard work. And that's probably why scoring 100 goal was so different. I remember more of that knock because we won the test match. The surprising thing is, for me, I can remember more times of getting out playing for England than I can boundaries hit. And I think that's probably why
that's made me really sad, that, Keaton.
But like, and honestly, that's where my head was at that point in time. I was so critical of my own performance. I loved it. I loved playing for England, but I was so focused on the negative of what I did rather than some of the positive things. And like, my dad will text me and go, "Oh, do you remember the start of the season when you nicked off?" And I'm like, "What?" No. And he goes, "No, you did." I'm like, "No, I didn't." He goes, "No, you did. Look." And he'll send me the video. I'm like, "All right, cool. I must have."
It's my biggest frustration with cricket. I think cricketers and like especially batting, the inability to enjoy success, especially because we play such a strange sport where someone gets 80, they're the top scorer of the day, and it's like, should have got 120. It's like, but you averaged 40, so you did twice as well as you normally did. All these other idiots got 15, and apparently it's still your fault, even though you were the best. Which I understand the logic. Anyway, that's the end of part 2. It's gone on for too long.
But also, so I'll touch on that again. So Josh
Yeah.
Bohannon with 200 against Kent played beautifully. One of the best knocks, timed the innings. Like him and Wellesley were sensational. Got 200, pretty good score.
That's low.
Walked in and he absolutely belted the water bottle off at the top of the table, gloves off, helmet off. And Benke sat next to me and he went, "Bloke's got 200 and we're still not satisfied." But that summed it up. It was like, regardless whether you got 80, 90, 100, 200, you want more. And I think that's, to a degree, is what makes your best players really good. But then the ability to let it go and move on, I think, is essential.
The transfer window. Transfer windows you kind of associate with football and deadline day and the rest of it. But it does exist in cricket as well. And we're getting to the start of silly season's too strong a phrase, but the kind of gossip and players moving around. I'm going to be honest, my knowledge of it isn't that deep, but that's why we have the very wise, the very intelligent, the very knowledgeable Nick Friend, just to explain how the cricket transfer system works. Then we'll go into Keaton, but how it affects this season, this time of year.
It's not, they don't call it the transfer window, do it. Effectively, it's just a silent date. It's like June 1st. If you're in the final of your deal, you can basically start talking to who you want. It used to be earlier, and then it was pushed a bit later to try and, I don't know, just give a bit more stability to the season. But it's been interesting. Like this summer has been, and the reason we're doing this now is because a couple of days ago, Ethan Bam's moved from Middlesex to Warwickshire was announced for next year, which really is the first piece of sort of business that's been publicly announced. Is this in the men's game, certainly this year, whereas this time last year, if you think back by 12, 13 months, Dan Lawrence joined Surrey, Liz Deploy was off to Middlesex, Notts have done their sort of three-way purge of new roads. There was a lot going on. Matt Parkinson was what was on loan at Durham, had moving to Kent. There was a lot going on. Whereas this, and I guess a lot of it, truthfully, is just because I guess it just depends year on year on who's available, doesn't it? And that was last year was quite a big year for that. This year, at the moment, there's not been enormous amount of activity. I mean, I guess the question, the big question I have for you is like how. I know in football, like there's the rumour mill starts and there is just uncertainty. Like the rumour mill doesn't exist in quite the same way in county cricket, but once June 1st comes around, like do you start hearing things? Like is there, I don't know, like does that date have the same kind of resonance as like a deadline day has in football, or is the first you really hear of it when you log on to social media and you see that Ethan Bam's off to Warwickshire and it's like, oh yeah, people can move.
So start of the season, a list of all players that are on their final year gets circulated, and that's kind of when your planning starts. So you eye up whatever 3-4 bowlers, 2-3 batters, whatever you feel like your squad needs, and then you June the 1st, you then try and target those players quite quickly because things do move quite quickly. I mean, we're only a month later, and Ethan's obviously signed. He didn't sign the day it was announced. He probably signed a couple of weeks ago. So that's when your planning starts. It's quite tough as well because then if you do lose a player, do you let them go? Do you keep them? Are they committed? Are they not? It can be quite challenging to manage. As we found last year, we had 3 or 4 guys move on, and it's hard work.
How much role do you have in that? Like you're a captain, but pretty senior captain, and I guess towards the end of last season you were. I don't know if you knew it was going to be Glenn Chappell's last year, but like you're the senior player, and obviously a lot of change over winter. Do you come June 1st? Do you know who's on that list? Like, does that fall on you at times to sort of have a chat with guys after a day's play? What your plans, what you're thinking? You're going to re-sign here, or we could do with you? Or...
Yeah, I wouldn't say it falls on my shoulders. I think fundamentally our DOC, Director of Cricket, it's his job. I definitely play a role or a key role in that. I think you can chat to players, whether it's your own guys looking to leave or whether it's guys you want in. I think it's different when you hear it from a coach. Some coaches may, or DOCs may promise you the world. Some may be very blunt. But when you hear it from within the change room, I think that's probably when it's quite key. I still remember that after I'd signed for Langs, obviously I played with Livy, but he was captain at the time. He texted and said, "Mate, buzzing. Like, really good to have you." And I think when you feel like the environment wants you, the lads want you, I think that's when it's quite key. Both as a guy in the environment. So if you have potential ambition to try and move out of a club, it's harder when that environment still wants you. If the coaches want you, obviously, because they want to keep you, but it's when the lads want you, it pulls at your heartstrings a bit more. So, go.
Yeah, just in terms of like the June 1st being like the line in the sand where formal negotiations are allowed to take place. But if you've got the list of players from like April or March or whatever it is, and for the sake of argument, I'm going to pretend that you're best mates with Ryan Higgins and you want to sign him next year and he's in the last year of his deal. Surely, like April 7th, there's a WhatsApp going in like, come on, mate. Like, it's great in Manchester. Come along. Or is that like forbidden?
So I know it's forbidden for coaches and DOC, so anybody of an official standing, to have any contact with players about transferring before June 1st. I would assume it's official for captains as well. I mean, I've got no authority to try and put a contract offer in front of somebody. I'm 99% sure every
just knock someone up yourself on the computer.
Yeah, go on.
That's what the NBA was for, wasn't it?
I'll be ringing Daniel Gidney going, sorry, but I've spent the budget already. But no, look, like if you're keen on a player, I mean, you have conversations as a bloke and say, mate, look, we'd love to have you at Lancs, and you might have signed a 3-year deal, and you say, well, look, at the end of the period, come and speak. I might not be captain at that point in time. Boshi might say the same thing as my vice captain, or Wellesley might say to whoever he sees, like, look, you need to chat to Chile when your deal's coming up. So I don't know if that's, I mean, hopefully it's lawful, but I think guys do talk. You spend a lot of time in change rooms in the Lions with guys that are from 10 other counties. So, and guys' contracts come up and they don't. So you can't offer anybody anything, and they still have to wait for that time period to lapse. But yeah.
The other end of that, you had it, as you mentioned there, a couple of times last year. It was Danny Lamb, Matt Parkinson, Rob Jones, all signed elsewhere. And all three ended up on loan elsewhere at different times. Whereas Dylan Pennington, as one of increasingly few examples, was part of the Worcester side that got them promoted in the last week of the season at Yorkshire. How easy is there a blanket? Is that a club by club? I don't know. Is it club by club? Is it player case by case? Once someone has announced their move, like what happens next? Is it? I think Rob Jones ended up back with you guys for the championship, didn't he? Because you were a batter light or two by September, but he was on loan for the One Day Cup. Like how do those decisions work? Is that I don't know. Like it's increasingly guys go on loan.
It's I'd probably say case by case. It would be what clubs need. I mean, a lot of clubs might feel like they need that player to stay because they're whatever fighting for promotion, relegation, for the championship, whatever it is. Other clubs might feel like they sort of don't want that player involved anymore because of, signed elsewhere. So they sort of allow that player, they've signed a 3-year deal at somewhere else, and you allow the player to go and start their future already. So I'd probably say clubs use it case by case. And it's, at the end of the day, you've signed until the end of September for that year. So you signed with that county till the end of that season. And that's the contract terms that you hold by.
So Bamba's moved on to Warwickshire, and kind of our man on the ground, Nick Friend. And, well, I was going to pretend that it's because he's a great journalist that he knew this, but apparently his old club mate was tapped up by half the circuit. So he was a man in demand. And I think for those outside of like the kind of cricket nuffy world, without wanting to disrespect Bamba, wouldn't necessarily call him a big name or even kind of know who he is necessarily. But how much of a sign is that the players that are in demand are kind of the less sexy names who will play for you, who will perform very well for you across the season, but won't be dragged away to go and play international cricket? How valuable is that to you as a skipper?
Oh, huge, because you know what you're going to get. You have those guys for the whole season. You can plan your squads around them. You need a group of players that you know are going to be there. If those players aren't going to be there, we've had an absolute nightmare trying to manage our squad this year. We've got guys all over the place. You have 2 injuries now. Suddenly you're scrapping together. And I mean, at one point I think we had 12 players that could play. It was like Tommy was over in at the World Cup, Salty, Joss, Livy. We had guys just all over the place. So it's really tough to manage it. So you need guys that you know are going to be with you. You know, you're going to play. I put myself in that category as well. You're going to play a chunk of cricket within the season, and you're going to make up the squad. So you need batters like that. You need bowlers like that, and then you try and supplement that with, as an example, a high quality overseas seamer, as Surrey did with Sean Abbott. And then if you're short a batter, you go out and you try and find a batter in that period of play. So absolutely, you need those guys in the squad. And that doesn't diminish what they offer at all. They're high quality cricketers. Ethan's a proper cricketer. He's horrible to face in the new ball. So you have high quality players, and that's why your really good players that are there for the whole season are of really good value, because you know what you're going to get.
Is that you've got Tom Bailey and Will Williams, I guess, two of the archetypal examples on the circuit of those. Like, how do you, captaincy wise, just I don't say manage them, but you're kind of just plugging them in April, aren't you, and saying, at the end of September, you can put your feet up. But is it just, how important is the challenge just creating that environment where you as a captain sort of have that relationship with those guys where they know they're going to play 14 games and they're going to be tired? Like you mentioned the schedule earlier and how tough that bit is. Presumably you want those two to play and then be able to sort of plug in Sakib for a healthy number of games around them, rather than having him to play every game because they're sitting out.
I'd probably even go a step or 2 steps forward. I think your strongest squads now almost have a 4-day bowling lineup and a T20 bowling lineup because of how back-to-back it is. And then I'll go even a step further. Your even better sides, I'll use Surrey as an example because they're top of the Champo. Your Will and Bales won't play 14 games. They'll probably play 11 or 12 because they'll play for 2 or 3 weeks, rest, and then come again. So you'll cycle through your bowlers that you have 4 fresh bowlers on the field at any one point. I mean, bowlers win you games of cricket. They do. You don't 20 wickets, you don't win that first class fixture. Fact. So for me, it's you have to know that yes, they're going to be tired. I mean, Bells is going away on holiday this week, go and freshen up, come back next week, start prepping up for the one-day comp. And then again, you look at playing sort of game on, game off. I think we played 3 games in 5 days at one point. So Will, Bales, all the guys that you've played, you can't play those guys 3 one-day games in a row. So you have to look after them. And that's, I think, how you get the balance of your quantity versus quantity correct.
And then that challenge presumably increased because you might want to, you might want to pre-plan the games they play. But if one of the lads who play, if one of the other lads then pull up, then you kind of have no choice but to go, right, Will, that game you're going to have off.
Yeah, you
see you tomorrow.
Listen, I'm really sorry. I know you're tired. I know you were going to go away, but see you at 11 a.m. tomorrow, brother. You're coming again.
Bring your boots.
Absolutely. Bring your boots. I'll tighten the spikes for you. But no, look, I think that's maybe I'm really lucky. Will, Bales, it's at times, I mean, Will's a nightmare to try and get the ball out of his hand. It's amazing that the guys will continue to put him at that level and want to put him at that level. So it can be hard work when you're the other side of the shoe and you're trying to get guys the ball and guys are looking the other way going, no, I've got no interest here. So look, I'm really lucky in that sense that we've got a squad where guys work harder. I mean, Benki said it a couple of times. It's the level that the guys put in at, even when we've lost, the guys just keep coming and keep showing up, which is amazing.
Keaton, thank you very much. I really enjoyed that. It was fascinating throughout, and particularly the part we found out you're illegally tapping up players every year. So that will be we'll get a message from the ECB and PCA in due course.
Perfect. Cool.
And we'll see you in court, basically. But if nobody covers cricket like the county cricketer, who's that? The cricketer, that's us. You can get access to all of our coverage of all 18 teams online from as little as £3.99 a month. The cricketer have won the ECB's basically top prize for 6 years in a row, so you don't have to just take our word for it. If you can chuck a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify, please do. Thank you, Keaton. Thank you, Nick. I've been Cameron, and if you're watching on YouTube, we'll see you next week, and if you're listening in your ears, we will speak to you next week. Thank you. Goodbye.